can you tell the story of Oumuamua? What is Oumuamua? How did you find it? Is it of this world? And kind of the backstory of how this object came to be as you see it.
Right. So this object, Oumuamua, was discovered on October 19th, 2017 by a telescope in Hawaii on Mount Haleakala that surveyed the sky. The telescope is called Pan-STARRS, and Oumuamua was the very first object discovered from outside the solar system near the Earth. And the reason we knew that it came from outside the solar system is that it was moving too fast. It couldn't have been bound to the sun. So unlike the planets that are gravitationally bound to the sun, this object was definitely not bound. It came too fast to be trapped by the gravity of the sun. And so it was the very first interstellar object, an object that came from in between the stars, not from the solar system itself. But the astronomers thought, oh, it must be just like the rocks we had found in the solar system, except it came from another star. Unfortunately, this was not the case. It didn't look like the object behaved like either an asteroid or a comet, the type of objects that we have seen within the solar system. It wasn't a comet because we haven't seen any gas around it. There was no dust or gas trailing it. There was no cometary tail, and the Spitzer Space Telescope looked very deeply and couldn't find any traces of gas to a very significant limit. And then as this object was tumbling over 8 hours, it reflected sunlight, and the amount of sunlight that it reflected changed by a factor of 10. And that meant that the object has an extreme shape, most likely flat, pancake shaped. And then another weird property of this object was that it was pushed away from the sun by some other force, in addition to the force of gravity that affects its trajectory. And the only additional force that I could think of was the reflection of sunlight. Mm-hmm. And indeed, that force behaved just like you expect for reflection of sunlight. But in order for the reflection of sunlight to be effective in pushing the object away from the sun, you need the object to be very thin, to have a large area for its mass. And that meant that it should be something like a sail, except not being pushed by the wind, but being pushed by reflecting light. That's called a light sail. And nature doesn't make thin objects like that, doesn't make sails. So that I made a suggestion in a scientific paper that it may be a light sail. And as it turns out, in September 2020, just over half a year ago, there was another object that exhibited the same behavior of being pushed away from the sun without showing a cometary tail. It was given the astronomical name 2020 SO after being discovered by the same telescope in Hawaii, Pan-STARRS. And shortly afterwards, astronomers realized this object actually came from the Earth. It was a rocket booster that was launched in 1966 as part of a lunar lander mission. And we know that we produced this object artificially. And it was thin, it had thin walls compared to its mass. And therefore it was pushed by reflecting sunlight. Obviously without a cometary tail. So we know that this object was artificial and the same qualities as Oumuamua. The question is, who produced Oumuamua?
So it shares some characteristics of other naturally occurring objects, but nothing fully. So that there are things that it does that are like comets or like asteroids or like other things that we've seen, but it does no one natural explanation has revealed itself through evidence. Is that correct to say?
It didn't look like a comet because it didn't have a cometary tail, so it was definitely not a comet. Then in terms of being an asteroid, an asteroid without a cometary tail doesn't show an excess push away from the sun. So it wasn't an asteroid and it wasn't a comet. So then the question was, what is it? Some astronomers try to explain it from a natural origin, and there were about 4 suggestions for a natural origin. All of them contemplated something that we've never seen before. For example, a collection of dust particles, a dust bunny, 100 times less dense than air. And the problem with that is when it comes close to the sun and it gets heated by hundreds of degrees, it will not maintain its integrity. That's the problem. There was another suggestion, maybe it's a hydrogen iceberg, a chunk of frozen hydrogen. And so when the hydrogen evaporates, it creates a cometary tail, but you can't see it because hydrogen is transparent. And the problem with that is that the hydrogen iceberg will get evaporated along its journey and not reach us. We showed it in a scientific paper. It won't last very long. Then there was a suggestion, maybe it's a nitrogen iceberg, chipped off a surface of a planet like Pluto. And the problem with that is the mass budget. We showed it in another paper. There is very little mass in solid nitrogen on the surface of Pluto. So if you imagine a lot of planetary systems that have a lot of Plutos that are chipped off, it's just impossible to get enough of those chunks of nitrogen to explain an object like Oumuamua, because the abundance of these objects will not be high enough for us to see one of them with Pan-STARRS. So that doesn't work either. There was another suggestion, maybe it's a piece of a bigger object that passed close to a star, but that would be most likely elongated, like a cigar rather than pancake shape. So all of the suggestions that were made invoked something that we've never seen before, and all of them had some problems, some issues, some flaw. And so my point is quite simple. If it's something we've never seen before, why not allow for the possibility that it's of artificial origin, that it was manufactured by a technological civilization?
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was reading your book, Extraterrestrial, I was thinking about the God argument, because I grew up as a Catholic. I went to church, and one of the things that kind of drew me away from Catholicism is that everything that we don't know is put in the bucket of God. So if it's a mystery, you just like drop it in the God bucket, and we don't know how this is happening. What if this is just a naturally occurring thing that we haven't understood yet? And when I was reading the book, it occurred to me, and I was thinking about, okay, so there's all these pieces of evidence, and you drop it in the bucket of it being from an intelligent civilization. You write the simplest explanation is that the object was created by an intelligent civilization, not of this earth, and you provide a ton of evidence to back it up, and you do it so beautifully in the book. And I was thinking, why are you choosing to drop it in the bucket of alien intelligence or another type of intelligence? Why not drop it in the bucket of naturally occurring thing that we may not understand yet?
Well, that's a possibility, but my point is, science is driven by evidence. So first of all, I went in that direction because the evidence looked anomalous. It didn't look like anything we've seen before. And obviously, all the other alternatives that were proposed by other scientists also invoke something that we've never seen before. So that it's clear that everyone agrees that it should be something we've never seen before. Now, how can we tell if it's natural in origin or artificial in origin? That's the fundamental question. And the best way to find out is actually looking for more objects of the same. And when we find another one that is on its approach to us, sending a spacecraft with a camera that will intercept the orbit, the trajectory of that weird object, and take a close-up photograph. Because, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. In my case, a picture is worth 66,000 words. The number of words in my book.
Yeah.
I wouldn't need to write a book if we had a photograph. So, it's just like any other scientific question. You can make progress by getting more evidence.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. As a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full, uncut, 2+ hour episodes of the Auxoro podcast, plus gain access to 2 bonus episodes every month at auxoro.supercast.tech. Link is also in the description. Thank you so much for supporting quality content from independent creators like myself. Cheers.